Theravāda Collection on Monastic Law, a translation of the Pali Vinaya Pitaka into English, translated by Bhikkhu Brahmali and read by Angus Cargill. Monks' Rules and Their Analysis. Expulsion. The first training rule on expulsion. Homage to the Buddha, the perfected one, the fully awakened one. At Verañjā, the origin of monastic law. At one time the Buddha was staying at Verañjā at the foot of Naleru's Nimba tree with a large Sangha of 500 monks. A Brahmin in Verañjā was told, "Sir, the ascetic Gautama, the Sakyan, who has gone forth from the Sakyan clan, is staying at Verañjā at the foot of Naleru's Nimba tree, with a large Sangha of 500 monks. That good Gautama has a fine reputation. He is a Buddha, perfected and fully awakened, complete in insight and conduct, happy, knower of the world, supreme leader of trainable people, teacher of gods and humans, awakened, a Buddha. With his own insight he has seen this world with its gods, its lords of death, and its supreme beings, this society with its monastics and Brahmins, its gods and humans, and he makes it known to others. He has a teaching that's good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. It has a true goal and is well articulated. He sets out a perfectly complete and pure spiritual life. It's good to see such perfected ones." That Brahmin then went to the Buddha, exchanged pleasantries with him, sat down and said, "I've heard, good Gautama, that you don't bow down to old Brahmins, stand up for them, or offer them a seat. I've now seen that this is indeed the case. This isn't right. Brahmin, in the world with its gods, lords of death, and supreme beings, in this society with its monastics and Brahmins, its gods and humans, I don't see anyone I should bow down to, rise up for, or offer a seat. If I did, their head would explode. Good Gautama lacks taste. There's a way you could rightly say that I lack taste, for I've abandoned the taste for forms, sounds, smells, flavors and touches. I've cut it off at the root, made it like a palm stump, eradicated it, and made it incapable of reappearing in the future. But that's not what you had in mind. Good Gautama has no enjoyment. There's a way you could rightly say that I have no enjoyment, for I've abandoned the enjoyment of forms, sounds, smells, flavors, and touches. I've cut it off at the root, made it like a palm stump, eradicated it, and made it incapable of reappearing in the future. But that's not what you had in mind. Good Gautama teaches inaction. There's a way you could rightly say that I teach inaction, for I teach the non-doing of misconduct by body, speech, and mind. I teach the non-doing of the various kinds of bad, unwholesome actions. But that's not what you had in mind. Good Gautama is an annihilationist. There's a way you could rightly say that I'm an annihilationist, for I teach the annihilation of sensual desire, ill will, and confusion. I teach the annihilation of the various kinds of bad, unwholesome qualities. But that's not what you had in mind. Good Gautama is disgusting. There's a way you could rightly say that I'm disgusting, for I am disgusted by misconduct, by body, speech, and mind. I am disgusted by the various kinds of bad, unwholesome qualities. But that's not what you had in mind. Good Gautama is an exterminator. There's a way you could rightly say that I'm an exterminator, for I teach the extermination of sensual desire, ill will, and confusion. I teach the extermination of the various kinds of bad, unwholesome qualities. But that's not what you had in mind. Good Gautama is austere. There's a way you could rightly say that I'm austere, for I say that bad, unwholesome qualities, misconduct by body, speech, and mind, are to be disciplined. One who has abandoned them, cut them off at the root, made them like a palm stump, eradicated them, and made them incapable of reappearing in the future, such a one I call austere. Now I've abandoned the bad, unwholesome qualities that are to be disciplined. I've cut them off at the root, made them like a palm stump, eradicated them, and made them incapable of reappearing in the future. But that's not what you had in mind. Good Gautama is an abortionist. There's a way you could rightly say that I'm an abortionist. For one who has abandoned any future conception in a womb, any rebirth in a future life, who has cut it off at the root, made it like a palm stump, eradicated it, and made it incapable of reappearing in the future, such a one I call an abortionist. Now I've abandoned any future conception in a womb, any rebirth in a future life. I've cut it off at the root, made it like a palm stump, eradicated it, and made it incapable of reappearing in the future. But that's not what you had in mind. Suppose, Brahmin, there was a hen with 8, 10, or 12 eggs, which she had properly covered, warmed, and incubated. The first chick that hatches safely after piercing through the eggshell with its claw or its beak, is it to be called the eldest or the youngest? It's to be called the eldest, for it's the eldest among them. Just so, in this deluded society, enveloped like an egg, I alone in the world have cracked the shell of delusion and reached the supreme full awakening. I, Brahmin, am the world's eldest and best. I was firmly energetic and had clarity of mindfulness. My body was tranquil and my mind stilled and unified. Fully secluded from the 5 senses, secluded from unwholesome mental qualities, I entered and remained in the first absorption, which has movement of the mind as well as the joy and bliss of seclusion. Through the stilling of the movement of the mind, I entered and remained in the second absorption, which has internal confidence and unification of mind, as well as the joy and bliss of stillness. Through the fading away of joy, I remained even-minded, mindful, and fully aware, experiencing bliss directly, and I entered and remained in the third absorption, of which the noble ones declare, "You are even-minded, mindful, and abide in bliss." Through the abandoning of bliss and pain and the earlier ending of joy and aversion, I entered and remained in the fourth absorption, which has neither pain nor bliss, but consists of purity of mindfulness and even-mindedness. Then, with my mind stilled, purified, cleansed, flawless, free from defilements, supple, wieldy, steady, and unshakable, I directed it to the knowledge that consists of recollecting past lives. I recollected many past lives, that is, 1 birth, 2 births, 3 births, 4 births, 5 births, 10 births, 20 births, 30 births, 40 births, 50 births, 100 births, 1,000 births, 100,000 births, many eons of world dissolution, many eons of world evolution, and many eons of both dissolution and evolution. And I knew There I had such name, such family, such appearance, such food, such experience of pleasure and pain, and such a lifespan. Passing away from there, I was reborn elsewhere, and there I had such name, such family, such appearance, such food, such experience of pleasure and pain, and such a lifespan. Passing away from there, I was reborn here. In this way I recollected many past lives with their characteristics and particulars. This was the first true insight, which I attained in the first part of the night. Delusion was dispelled and true insight arose. Darkness was dispelled and light arose, as happens to one who is heedful, energetic, and diligent. This, Brahmin, was my first breaking out, like a chick from an eggshell. Then, with my mind stilled, purified, cleansed, flawless, free from defilements, supple, wieldy, steady, and unshakable, I directed it to the knowledge of the passing away and arising of beings. With superhuman and purified clairvoyance, I saw beings passing away and getting reborn, inferior and superior, beautiful and ugly, gone to good destinations and to bad destinations, and I understood how beings pass on according to their actions. These beings who engaged in misconduct by body, speech, and mind, who abused the noble ones, who had wrong views and acted accordingly, at the breaking up of the body after death, have been reborn in a lower realm, a bad destination, a world of misery, hell. But these beings who engaged in good conduct of body, speech, and mind, who did not abuse the noble ones, who held right view and acted accordingly, at the breaking up of the body after death, have been reborn in a good destination, a heaven world. In this way, with superhuman and purified clairvoyance, I saw beings passing away and getting reborn, inferior and superior, beautiful and ugly, gone to good destinations and to bad destinations, and I understood how beings pass on according to their actions. This was the second true insight, which I attained in the middle part of the night. Delusion was dispelled, and true insight arose. Darkness was dispelled, and light arose, as happens to one who is heedful, energetic, and diligent. This, Brahmin, was my second breaking out, like a chick from an eggshell. Then, with my mind stilled, purified, cleansed, flawless, free from defilements, supple, wieldy, steady and unshakable, I directed it to the knowledge of the ending of the corruptions. I knew, according to reality, this is suffering. This is the origin of suffering. This is the end of suffering. This is the path leading to the end of suffering. I knew, according to reality, these are the corruptions. This is the origin of the corruptions. This is the end of the corruptions. This is the path leading to the end of the corruptions. When I knew and saw this, my mind was freed from the corruption of sensual desire, from the corruption of desire to exist, from the corruption of views, and from the corruption of delusion. When it was freed, I knew it was freed. I understood that birth had come to an end, the spiritual life had been fulfilled. The job had been done. There was no further state of existence. This was the third true insight which I attained in the last part of the night. Delusion was dispelled, and true insight arose. Darkness was dispelled, and light arose, as happens to one who is heedful, energetic, and diligent. This, Brahmin, was my third breaking out, like a chick from an eggshell. That Brahmin then said to the Buddha, "Good Gautama is the eldest. Good Gautama is the best. Wonderful, good Gautama, wonderful." Just as one might set upright what's overturned, or reveal what's hidden, or show the way to one who's lost, or bring a lamp into the dark so one with eyes might see what's there, just so has the Buddha made the teaching clear in many ways. Good Gautama, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the teaching and the Sangha of monks. Please accept me as a lay follower who's gone for refuge for life. And please consent to spend the rainy season residence at Verañjā together with the Sangha of monks. The Buddha consented by keeping silent, and the Brahmin understood. He then got up from his seat, bowed down, circumambulated the Buddha with his right side toward him, and left. At that time, Verañjā was short of food and afflicted with hunger, with crops affected by whiteheads and turned to straw. It was not easy to get by on alms food. Just then, some horse dealers from Uttarapata had entered the rainy season residence at Verañjā with 500 horses. In the horse pen they prepared portion upon portion of steamed grain for the monks. Then, after robing up in the morning, the monks took their bowls and robes and entered Verañjā for alms. Not getting anything, they went to the horse pen. They then brought back many portions of steamed grain to the monastery, where they pounded and ate them. Venerable Ananda crushed a portion on a stone, took it to the Buddha, and the Buddha ate it. And the Buddha heard the sound of the mortar. When Buddhas know what is going on, sometimes they ask and sometimes not. They know the right time to ask and when not to ask. Buddhas ask when it is beneficial, otherwise not, for Buddhas are incapable of doing what is unbeneficial. Buddhas question the monks for two reasons: to give a teaching or to lay down a training rule. And so he said to Ananda, "Ananda, what's this sound of a mortar?" Ananda told him what was happening. "Well done, Ananda. You're all superior people who have conquered the problems of famine. Later generations will despise even meat and rice." Then Venerable Mahamoggallana went to the Buddha, bowed, sat down and said, "At present, sir, Verañjā is short of food and afflicted with hunger, with crops affected by whiteheads and turned to straw. It's not easy to get by on alms food, but the undersurface of this great earth abounds with food, tasting just like pure honey. Would it be good, sir, if I inverted the earth so that the monks may enjoy the nutrition in that ground fungus?" "But what will you do, Moggallana, with the creatures that live there?" "I'll transform one hand to be like the great earth and make those creatures go there. I'll then invert the earth with the other hand." "Let it be, Moggallana. Don't invert the earth. Those creatures might lose their minds." "In that case, sir, would it be good if the whole Sangha of monks could go to Uttarakuru for alms?" "Let it be, Moggallana. Don't pursue this." Soon afterwards, while reflecting in private, Venerable Sariputta thought, which Buddhas had a long-lasting spiritual life and which not? In the evening, after coming out of seclusion, Sariputta went to the Buddha, bowed, sat down and said, "Just now, sir, while I was reflecting in private, I was wondering which Buddhas had a long-lasting spiritual life and which not." "Sariputta, the spiritual life established by the Buddhas Vipassi, Sikhi, and Vesabhu didn't last long, but the spiritual life established by the Buddhas Kakusanda, Konagamana, and Kassapa did. And why did the spiritual life established by the former three Buddhas not last long?" They made no effort to give detailed teachings to their disciples. They gave few discourses in prose or in mixed prose and verse, few expositions, verses, heartfelt exclamations, quotations, birth stories, amazing accounts, and analyses. Nor did they lay down training rules or recite a monastic code. After the disappearance of those Buddhas and the disciples awakened under them, those who were the last disciples, of various names, families, and castes, who had gone forth from various households, allowed that spiritual life to disappear rapidly. It's like flowers on a wooden plank. If they're not held together with a string, they're scattered about, whirled about, and destroyed by the wind. Why? Because they're not held together with a string. Just so, after the disappearance of those Buddhas and the disciples awakened under them, those who were the last disciples allowed that spiritual life to disappear rapidly. Instead, they were untiring at instructing their disciples by reading their minds. At one time, Sariputta, the Buddha Vesabhu, the perfected and the fully awakened one, was staying in a certain frightening forest grove. He instructed a Sangha of 1,000 monks by reading their minds, saying, "Think like this, not like that. Pay attention like this, not like that. Abandon this and attain that." When they had been instructed by Buddha Vesabhu, their minds were freed from the corruptions through letting go. But if anyone with sensual desire entered that frightening forest grove, they usually had goosebumps all over. This is why the spiritual life established by those Buddhas did not last long. Why then did the spiritual life established by the latter 3 Buddhas last long? The Buddhas Kakusanda, Konagamana, and Kassapa were untiring in giving detailed teachings to their disciples. They gave many discourses in prose and in mixed prose and verse, many expositions, verses, heartfelt exclamations, quotations, birth stories, amazing accounts, and analyses. And they laid down training rules and recited a monastic code. After the disappearance of those Buddhas and the disciples awakened under them, those who were the last disciples, of various names, families, and castes, who had gone forth from various households, made that spiritual life last for a long time. It's like flowers on a wooden plank. If they're held together with a string, they're not scattered about, whirled about, or destroyed by the wind. Why? Because they are held together with a string. Just so, after the disappearance of those Buddhas and the disciples awakened under them, those who were the last disciples made that spiritual life last for a long time. This is why the spiritual life established by those Buddhas lasted long. Sariputta then got up from his seat, arranged his upper robe over one shoulder, raised his joined palms, and said, "This is the time, Venerable Sir, for laying down training rules and reciting a monastic code, so that this spiritual life may last for a long time." Hold on, Sariputta. The Buddha knows the appropriate time for this. The teacher doesn't lay down training rules or recite a monastic code until the causes of corruption appear in the Sangha. And they don't appear until the Sangha has attained long-standing, great size, an abundance of the best material support, or great learning. When the causes of corruption appear for any of these reasons, then the teacher lays down training rules for his disciples and recites a monastic code in order to counteract these causes. Sariputta, the Sangha of monks is free from cancer and danger, stainless, pure, and established in the essence. Even the least developed of these 500 monks is a stream enterer. They will not be reborn in the lower world, but are fixed in destiny and bound for awakening. Then the Buddha said to Ananda, "Ananda, it's the custom for Buddhas not to go wandering the country without taking leave of those who invited them to spend the rainy season residence. Let's go to the Brahmin of Verañjā and take leave." "Yes, sir." The Buddha robed up, took his bowl and robe, and with Ananda as his attendant, went to that Brahmin's house where he sat down on the prepared seat. The Brahmin approached the Buddha, bowed, and sat down. And the Buddha said, "Brahmin, we've completed the rain's residence according to your invitation, and now we take leave of you. We wish to depart to wander the country." "It's true, good Gautama, that you've completed the rain's residence according to my invitation, but I haven't given anything. That's not good. It's not because I didn't want to, but because household life is so busy. Would you and the Sangha of monks please accept a meal from me tomorrow?" The Buddha consented by keeping silent. Then, after instructing, inspiring, and gladdening that Brahmin with a teaching, the Buddha got up from his seat and left. The following morning, the Brahmin prepared various kinds of fine foods in his own house, and then had the Buddha informed that the meal was ready. The Buddha robed up, took his bowl and robe, and together with the Sangha of monks, he went to that Brahmin's house where he sat down on the prepared seat. And that Brahmin personally served and satisfied the Sangha of monks headed by the Buddha with various kinds of fine foods. When the Buddha had finished his meal, the Brahmin gave him a set of 3 robes, and to each monk 2 pieces of cloth. The Buddha instructed, inspired, and gladdened him with a teaching, and then got up from his seat and left. After remaining in Verañjā for as long as he liked, the Buddha travelled to Payagapatita via Saraya, Sankasa, and Kanakuja. There he crossed the river Ganges and continued on to Benares. After remaining at Benares for as long as he liked, he set out wandering towards Vaisali. When he eventually arrived, he stayed in the hall with the peaked roof in the Great Wood. This section for recitation on Verañjā is finished.